Corsair,
Apple Floppy Days,
Commodore,
Tandy Floppy Days,
Atari,
TI Floppy Days. The weekend comes, the disk drive hums, ready to code for you. These days we're all happy and free.
those floppy days,
The games we play, you shared with me.
those days,
Motorola Intel 6502. Graphics and text are there to view. Composite, color, or RGB. Program fun for you and me.
Floppy Days is recorded in a live studio.
Inside PC Floppy Days, SD Amiga Floppy Days, Junior Sinclair Floppy Days, Classic Days, Microwaves, geeking all week with you. These days we're all happy and free.
those floppy days,
The games we play, you shared with me.
those days,
These floppy days are yours and mine. These floppy days are yours and mine. Floppy days.
This is the Floppy Days Podcast on vintage computing, and my name is Randy Kindig. This is a special episode featuring Jason Scott of archive.org fame. Many of you will be familiar with Jason Scott and the work he does in helping to preserve media and content, including content associated with our beloved vintage computers. You may or may not be as familiar with the work also being done to emulate vintage computers and vintage gaming platforms in a browser. On May 2nd, 2015, Jason Scott gave a presentation to the crowd at VCF Southeast entitled Every Computer in Your Browser, the Internet Archive Emulated Software Collection. Jason and the VCF Southeast organizers were kind enough to agree to allow me to rebroadcast this presentation on Floppy Days to help get the word out about all the great work being done to preserve our machines. Jason also had presentation material to go along with the talk that I am posting on the Floppy Days site for your enjoyment.
You'd think the 80s mega mix would bring the boys to the yard, but apparently not. We put on something that allows me to see the gushing crowds coming out. Boy. There, now that I can see your beautiful faces, what percentage of people know or have heard of me before? What percentage? Good. All right, that's a good solid number. All right, I'll take it. The solid number was 4. I'll be playing the hits all night. Let's turn that down. All right, it's 12:19. I can talk for hours, but I'm only going to go for a short period of time. All right. Again, so thanks to the Vintage Computer Festival Southeast for bringing me down here. I live in New York, work for a company in San Francisco, like I'll talk about, but I appreciate being brought down. I'm available all this weekend, and I will be speaking again tomorrow about in great depth about the place that I work at. Here, I'm only going to mention it as a side thing. So my name is Jason Scott. My official position is free-range archivist at the Internet Archive in San Francisco. My other title is software curator, and today I'm talking about something called Every Computer in Your Browser, the power of the emularity and what all that means and where it's going. And as somebody who has been steeped in vintage festival culture and lore for many years, it's something that I'm doing that I believe very strongly in and I think has meaning going forward. So let's just get started, all right? I've been many weird things in my life. Some of them have gotten press, some haven't. But these days, I'm just kind of known as the angel of death. And the reason I'm known as the angel of death is because when sites are going down, or things are being shut off, or estates are being gone through, or things are being brought out that are components of things that are no longer with us, I tend to show up. And if I show up before anybody else knows it's going away, it's a really bad sign. So I belong to a couple of projects in which we go to websites that are going down. For instance, Groove Shark went down just yesterday with no warning. We've been downloading all of the screenshots from the Halo players information servers that are at Microsoft, but Bungie has long ago left, and we think that they're starting to delete old player screenshots. So we've been downloading them. Also been downloading every FTP site we can find on the internet because our theory is FTP is kind of over. So we're just grabbing all of it before it all goes away. I work here. This is the Internet Archive in San Francisco, a renovated Christian Science church that was purchased a few years ago by my boss because it looked like his logo, which is always a good initiation to do, right? This is the site. The Internet Archive is at archive.org. It's a nonprofit. It's a registered library in California, and it has many, many, many different items involving books and audio and movies and music and all sorts of crazy things. And it's been around since 1996. A lot of people know it for being the Wayback Machine. The Wayback Machine is one of its services where you can go and look at any website that's been reasonably crawled in the past 15 years. It's used in legal cases, it's used in stories, it's used to prove things. Primarily it's used for hilarious nostalgia, and it's visited by millions every day. Inside the building, it gets weirder. So there's a whole bunch of pews and then servers in the back, and there's little tiny statues of employees. So if you work there for 3 years, they build a little statue of you, because as my boss says, we don't do stock options. So instead, he kind of keeps your memory alive. And here's my guy. And so he's clutching little softwares to his heart. So in the back of this area and in other parts of the building and in other buildings, there are these boxes that we currently call petaboxes, because each column is 1 petabyte. So petabyte, 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 3 petabytes there. And a petabyte is, of course, 1,000 terabytes, which is 1,000 gigabytes, which is a lot. And inside, again, we just make the stuff available for free. We don't have ads. The whole purpose is to get out as much information to people as fast as possible. So we have some really nice bandwidth going in, and we just provide it there. There's no weird, bizarre agenda. It's just, here you go. What's a library going to be in the 21st century? Probably a room full of servers and your ability to go through them. We're grabbing every satellite television channel, and we have been for years and years and years. So we have thousands and thousands of hours of television, and we have a way for you to scan old news to see what was said. We're ingesting things like videotapes, everything from Betacam and reel-to-reel all the way down to like professional CCAM tapes and everything else. In other words, you know, when you start looking at things like our book scanning operations, where we're scanning things like this Braille edition of Playboy, we are just ingesting as much as we can to make at least a digital copy, especially non-destructively. This is our inbox for books. Anyway, so that should be my life. Everything should be fantastic. The angel of death should walk the streets of Belfast like he's doing here and be fine. However, my boss, Brewster Kahle, here he is, was a guy who made a lot of money in the dot-com era, and his dream was to rebuild the Library of Alexandria. And he's done a pretty interesting job. And he came to me, and he was like, you know, Jason, we've done all this stuff together, books and movies and music, but you know, where we've really fallen down is software. We didn't really collect software. We sort of took a Mirror of Two Cows in 2002, but I wish we had more software. So I got on the case. I grabbed everything I could, CD images, collections of FTP sites, TAR archives, collections from websites, everything I could, because as you all know, software has meaning. You know, everything else I'm going to say from this point on is probably not meaningful if you do not accept that software has a cultural and meaningful piece of what makes us us. Like, if you look back at the software that's been written, what it represents, the dreams it represents, the ideas and everything else, we're done. It's been great. You should visit the archive. Thank you. But if not, I'll just tell you again, you know, it's great to see some of these old things and have connection to the hardware and the writing within, right? And this is how we can provide it now. We'll have things like a Vintage Computer Festival, where once every year you walk over and you look at an old thing and say, yep, that was definitely an old thing. And the person in front of it goes, and I'm an old thing. I'm an old thing too. Let's get a drink. And old things talk and we're all done. But one of the problems, of course, is that it requires physical access, and it also requires going to the place, and it requires a bunch of other things. And it doesn't give you infinite time, and it certainly makes it hard for a researcher or a person trying to prove something. You can't just bother this Atari ST guy and ask him to go through his collection and go through things. Instead, what we have is, to me, fundamentally the meaning. And this is always my illustration of that. Somebody sent me this. This is an Atari Basic Reference Manual from 1984. And what this guy has done is like his favorite rock stars or his favorite My Little Pony. He has drawn all the icons of various companies like Datasoft and in his notebook. But more than that, what Scott has done is Scott has kept this thing, right, for 25 years because there's a modern Apple keyboard. So not only was it meaningful then, it's meaningful now. Like, it's unquestionably a part of what makes us us. In fact, here's me, right? It's me at 11, insisting my father pull over so I could pose like the coolest 11-year-old you ever imagined next to the Apple sign in California, because I was cool. Notice the glasses, that's what makes me cool. Not this thing. I don't even know what jacket that is, but okay. All right, anyway, so nowadays we're the largest collection of software on the web that's accessible, period. Find me a bigger one and I'll download it and I'll add it to us, okay? So we're huge. We're terabytes and terabytes and terabytes of software. So mission accomplished. I should be able to say, we're done here. I should be able to say, okay, well, we have it all. But, we also have books and movies and music, and we could have just made a big pile of those and said mission accomplished, but that wasn't what Brewster wanted. Brewster believes access drives preservation. He believes that unless people interact with things, that they don't really see the value. If you tell somebody in a building you can't see, we have a bunch of paintings, it's been handled. That's less likely to get your funding, your attention, your approval, and everything else unless you occasionally can see those paintings, somehow. And so this belief of his, I think, really does push out. If you don't get access to things, it's one thing to say we have a bunch of music, but if you can't play the music or if you can't find the music, it's not the same thing. If you go to us, you can go to our site, and for instance, this is a nightclub that's in California, and I have a deal with them that they live from the soundboard record every night, and then 3 days later we put up the full 5-hour MP3 of the band that performed that night. And this is like 3,000 shows, so it's like 15,000 hours of dancing and music and occasional events. And it doesn't freak any of you out that you can press this button and be able to listen to the music. And similarly, like if you have like this Apple II Forever edition of Computer Chronicles, which you can just play. If I give this link to you, your first response isn't, oh my God, it's like it's in high definition in my browser. I can just watch a movie? They're like, oh, this is pretty good. I haven't seen that guy in forever. Like, you react to the thing inside. The functionality is boring. You get annoyed if it's a little slower than it should be. But you don't go like, oh my God, I can't believe we're watching a video in the browser. Same thing with books. We have an online book reader so that you can click on one of these books and then flip through the pages or download a PDF or a Kindle-ready version or look at the text or torrent it for reasons I don't know why you would do that. But, the ability to like just read a book online, make this full screen, flip it through, it's compatible with your iPad, it's very nice. And the reason why is because people are more likely to see the value in doing it. So software is a little more problematic. So when I started working at the archive in 2011, it was a matter of, oh, I should really do something about this. And Brewster said, take whatever solution you want. And there were multiple solutions I could have taken for being able to play software. We could have made emulators available that you would download and tell you if you booted it in, it would be great. And there are some wonderful, wonderful ways to deal with emulation. Like if you've got somebody who's got, you can either pull up a fully working, digital system with lab code included. And this is Pavel, he's awesome. These all work and he'll walk you through it. Or you can go grab an emulator of it and be able to see it instantly, right? This is to me this is a future, but it's not the only future. Having a bunch of machines beautifully displayed behind glass gives you no insight into them. Emulators are different, right? The Multiple Arcade Machine Emulator, MAME, which was started in 1998, was an attempt to emulate Pac-Man by an Italian. And 20 years later, it now emulates 29,500 different arcade games. And the reason that it took off was because very soon in its time frame, people figured out, we're not emulating machines. We're emulating compilations of chips. So let's emulate the chips really well and then declare any machine coming in as a collection of prefabbed chips. So you're not really emulating this arcade game. You're emulating a 6502 and an AY3 and some functionality for joystick connections, and you have your machine. So anytime a new machine came out, they dumped the small parts that were different. Boom, they have it working. And like I said, just tons and tons and tons of arcade games. And that's very interesting. That's nice. Everyone gets to play Pac-Man again. The world has changed a little, I guess. But more importantly to me, somebody said, well, is there any reason that a computer isn't also like a really complicated arcade game that's basically a compilation of chips, doesn't have a coin slot, although it should, and it has a disk drive instead? And why don't we emulate that? So instead of, MAME Pac-Man, what about MAME Atari 800 Preppy? The ability to function, and that ended up being something called MESS, the Multi-Emulator Super System, which emulates 1,600 different computer platforms. Really obscure ones too, deliciously obscure. But, a lot of the regular ones, it doesn't do everyone perfectly, but by fixing the central shared pieces, everything gets better. So if it gets better at doing disk drives, they all get better at doing disk drives. MESS emulation is complicated. This is a shader bit. So this is an emulation of a terrible monitor. So it's got the bleed and the fog and the fuzziness and a slight roundness trying to imitate a certain kind of monitor. And it's gotten to the point that you can emulate like a 1983 RCA. And, we're getting to the point that the software gets more and more complicated. So great, this was all, to me, interesting. Now, the problem with emulators is that it's like buying a boat, which is, this person goes, oh, I want to emulate. Okay, well, then I'm going to have to go grab this program, and I'm going to have to go find the ROMs, wherever those are, and I'm going to have to install them. And then if I want it to be pretty, I'm going to have to install these, which are located in a site in Italy. And then I'm going to have to arrange them. And so now you have to go through like front ends. So again, the problem is if you do it, it's great. Runs fast, efficient, wonderful. But there's none of that ambient sense of computing. Like if you walk up to this table and you're like, that's Jumpman. Jumpman's awesome. Next one. That's a radio. Radios are awesome. You don't get that with the emulation systems. What you end up doing is you end up collecting little dragon hordes of games that sit in a corner for a person or a small select group of people, or you have a multi-machine in a hackerspace, or you otherwise have some sort of reduced location thing, and you're talking about maybe an audience of a few 10,000 who want to go through that with any amount of accuracy. So there came out this piece of technology, and it's called Emscripten. It's out from the last 4 or 5 years, and it's a Mozilla project. And what it is the technical term for it is it's a compilation target that converts to JavaScript. What that means is for a pretty sizable amount of code out there, there is a way to say, instead of compiling it, push it through Emscripten, and Emscripten will produce JavaScript, which will run your program. And this is crazy. It's insane. But one of the side effects of it is that it utilizes JavaScript, which, sad to say, is pretty much the only cross-browser, cross-platform language that isn't owned by a jerk. Because Java has shown itself to be Sue-happy and weird, and again, I'm not selling you this, I'm just telling you it's terrible for standards. If you try to install it on Windows, it says, well, okay, this is my attitude. Any language that says, hey, while you're installing me, would you like a search bar, is not my buddy in the long term. And any case where a company buys out an esteemed company like Sun, shucks out the 30 years of work it's done, picks up the golden pellet of the the Java patent and starts punching Google in the face with it, is not a long-term strategy. But JavaScript, terrible JavaScript, designed in 10 days by Brendan Eich, primarily to allow menus to blink and for us to show screens, has turned out to somehow stealthily become the language of choice for the web. It's not an ideal situation, but it does work. So, the next slide took 2.5 years. We put MESS and MAME through Emscripten and produced a JavaScript version of them. So it's called the JavaScript mess. And the JavaScript mess, or JS mess, was the first part of a program set to be able to allow computers to run emulation inside of the browser. And we created this, and the concept was, imagine every computer that ever existed in your browser. This is done. I need none of your money. I'd love your time just to play with it. But this is the big, big work. We're able to emulate game systems, computer systems. We can do the sound. We can do the disks. All of the emulation processes that were built into MESS and MAME now work in the browser. If you go to archive.org, details, console living room, or type console living room, or believe me, you can find it very easily on the archive. Just go to the software collection. You end up in this console living room where you can play 21 different game consoles. Game consoles nobody wants. Nobody loved them. They started out poor, they got poorer, and they died. But they're out there. I mean, yeah, we have the Atari 2600 and the Atari 7800. We certainly have the Sega Game Gear, the Sega Genesis. You go to a thing like the Sega Game Gear, and here's all these programs. It's 455 cartridges, and you click on it, and boom, you're in it. Same thing with ColecoVision. Here's a Burger Time prototype that never got out. And you can click on this, run in an in-browser emulation, and then you're just playing. You're just there. And in the same way you will not flip out about movies and music playing in your browser, my hope is that this will be so boring. It's already starting to get boring. It'll just be, it's emulated. It's just in my browser, right? We have all these weird consoles, and people will be like, I know what this one is. I don't know what that, okay, that's the F8. And this is a GX 4000. Anyway, if and I always make a point of this, is like, yeah, I did some work, I helped oversee this, but this is the work of hundreds of people, including many people who contributed drivers. And any of you who, if you play with something that you see this and you say, why didn't you emulate this thing? And you talk to them, they will improve the drivers. So we've had all sorts of feedback about that. Ultimately, this is pushed into something that I now call the emularity. And the emularity is an open source program, which I'm going to make easier and easier, which is essentially the open source loader of our emulators. In other words, you take a zip file, you drop it into a directory, you drop it into a website, you go to it, there's a computer there. So you're like, I need an Apple II, you take the emularity, you dump it into a browser window, you have an Apple II there forever. And you're able to play whatever on it. And I'm trying to make it that this works for a variety of emulators, not just ours. And the idea here is infinite computers for everybody, forever. We have something called the Internet Arcade, which is basically all the video games. So this is, not all the video games, about 636 video games, which should hold you for a weekend. And you're able to go around and play them and put money in them and play around with their driver settings and comment on them and look in them. You click on the thing and you're like, I want to play Frenzy, and you're playing Frenzy. Here's MS-DOS programs by the truckload. This is where a guy sent me a 143 meg collection of floppies that he had imaged from the 1980s, and I have a program that goes in, pulls out the program, plays it inside of a browser by itself, takes screenshots, comes up with the most complicated screenshot, makes that the official screenshot, and then uploads it all. So when you go to it, there is in this collection there are 3,900 programs, many of which I have never used myself. No human hands have ever touched it. Like this program. This is my favorite program. It helps you predict tides. You go and you say I'm at San Diego, that TID, and then you tell it what the date is, and it tells you what the tides are going to be. These are early apps from 1991. Just the kind of program you'd put up on your phone, this thing has, right? And especially pieces of minor history that would be lost, like the entire art of defining shadows within text so that you would have dimensionality applying to the windows. These are the little things that just show up, and I could give you a single URL, and you are in this program. And you're able to pass that around and go, oh my God, look what Zanysoft did before Zanysoft did, all the nuclear technology or whatever the heck they did later. You're able to just say, go take a look, and everyone boots it up and looks at it. That's the world we're currently living in. Yeah, games are cool. Besides the console living rooms games, again, obscure systems. If you look here, you can see this one has 31, this one's got 563 games, this one has 4. The story of the Intex Adventure Vision, like nature, was nasty Brutus in short, was not a good life. Why? Because of its very limited cartridges, Super Cobra, Space Force, Turtles, and Defender. And if you looked at the graphics were not very impressive. Now, the reason the graphics weren't very impressive for the NTEX was because the NTEX was actually a line of 40 LEDs that were spinning next to a mirror going to plastic. If this sounds terrible, yes! Yes, this is awful. Look at this. This is awful. Who brought this home and thought they were going to be the hero that year? But I can give you a URL and you can experience the NTEX Adventure Vision and have it out of your house in milliseconds. No haggling for the $300 for however many copies of these things are left. There it is. You can write about it. What were the driving forces behind it? You can link to it in an article about it and have people experience the wonder themselves. That's the world I'm shooting for, right? Where's the future? This is the greatest article title related to my work I've gotten so far. So it stays. Why are we trying to create Ready Player One's terrifying nostalgia-filled dystopia is a great way to describe one of my projects. Terrifying nostalgia-fueled dystopia is currently the topic on our channel, because that's what we're building. I don't know how many people here have read Ready Player One. I had the pleasure of speaking with the author at South by Southwest. We were on a panel together. But Ready Player One is a book that's out there. Steven Spielberg has just optioned the rights and will be directing a movie based on it. And it's about a world where a famous game maker who has essentially made the world's greatest multi-user online universe, as the rest of the world has kind of bounced down into a la dystopia. He dies and he announces post-death that he has buried 3 secret keys in the universe, and whoever finds the 3 keys will get to own the business. And so the only way to be able to beat it is to really understand 1980s culture. Video games, movies, and everything else. And a young kid who's 16, and I think the thing's taking place around 2035, 2040, is traveling through video games and old movies trying to beat other groups towards it, and it turns deadly, and it's a lot of fun. And people kept seeing my work here and being like, oh, you're just making this guy's world. So, yeah, in some ways, I'm trying not to make it terrifying and nostalgia-fueled, but I am working on it. For instance, we have this working now. This is Windows 3.1.1 emulated in a browser. And not just emulated in a browser and using a proxy capable of connecting to the internet. This means that you can connect to a real website using Netscape 1.0 and have it work. So, this is a 1995 browser inside of a 1993 operating system running inside of a 2015 browser that's inside of a 2009 operating system. And it works. And all these poor sites get a little thing in their access log saying, Netscape 1.0 connected. Sorry. But all this works, right? The Paint program works, FTP works, Solitaire works, like it all works inside of your browser. My favorite bit is we actually have MAME on this thing running Pac-Man. So you can actually run Pac-Man inside of an operating system that's emulated inside of a browser inside of your operating system. I don't think this is going to get less complicated and weird. It's having an effect out there. We have a copy of the Oregon Trail up, and for some reason, people just love this thing. Like, it's really weird. This turns out to be the killer app, is Oregon Trail. We've had 1 million plays since January. And I was sent pictures from a school because it's part of their required curriculum for the kids now. They go to the Internet Archive and they play emulated Apple IIs inside of browsers. And they sent it to me just to say, look, these kids are playing this game from 1990. As I mentioned before, I'm not too worried about the people who will complain about the fidelity and whatever else. I mean, there's certainly work to provide the crappiness of the past to the future, right? My job right now is I am ingesting as much data as possible, as many CDRs, CDs, hard drives and pieces as possible, because now with this automatic ingestion, we're able to hit what I call the emularity, which is emulation within emulation, the ability to bring in information, and this pile of plastic has meaning again. All of the shareware and stuff, we're going to be able to mount the CDs and be able to run them inside of emulated computers. We've already been able to prove we have the technology, we have the ability to pull it in where you can save out what's in the floppy, and load in what's in the floppy. So you'll be able to boot up an Apple II or an Atari, save it to the floppy, save the floppy on your desktop, and then inject it later, which means infinite vintage computers online forever. So that's happened. I just like this image. Like, this is like a beautiful little piece of work that I think nobody would play anymore. There's all these old games that have their own predecessors, their own precedents. It's just interesting to swim through this history now, to be able to look at these old things like that. As fast as I'm hitting these slides, you can go be playing these games. Here's a ZX Spectrum from 1987, and a line of art and how things were done that is just kind of lost. An Apple II, very early desktop publishing program that enabled kids to understand how to do a newspaper. And it had everything. Look, it was a multi-format app. We are definitely living in an interesting time. And so what I'm mostly here telling you about is, there's a debate, of course, there's always debates and everything else, but this is our line in the sand. The Internet Archive is trying to do for software what the world has done for movie music and for other things like books, is basically turn computer history into an embeddable, playable, enjoyable object that we can debate. Nothing beats having a real Wico joystick playing a real copy of Preppy on a real Atari 800, but the ability to show people what that was and give them aspects of it and let them experience it instantly in their browser. When we put this up, we've done this in stages. We put up all of the consoles up. We actually put up the arcade games later, and then I put up this MS-DOS thing, and that's when it started to, the 30-somethings who are now the editors of all the online magazines and things that people read, remember DOS. Like Atari and Apple, those were invented by the Romans when they were working with the Egyptians on the pyramids. But when it came to MS-DOS, they know that, that's real. And so the week after we announced that we had put up 3,000 MS-DOS games, 9 million individuals came to visit the archive and just play MS-DOS programs. So I know this is wanted. There are programs here for whom I can tell you that January 2015 is when the vast majority of people who ever played that piece of software played it. That's where we are now, and that's where we're going. This is the work that I'm working on. I'm doing other projects, I'm doing other pieces, obviously, but this is very close and dear to my heart. This has been a long journey, and I've been traveling the world now, speaking to various groups about this. I'll be at the Library of Congress to talk about game preservation later this year. I've been to Stockholm, and I've been to other game conventions, because I believe that this is functionally important to the whole vintage computer experience. It takes away the grabbing of hardware just to have it, just to play one or two games. It enables people to reconnect with their history. It enables history to live on. It enables people to do research and understanding and define a part of our culture that I think is very much a major percentage of what makes the modern person us. And I think that it's going to continue to grow. And best of all, it's just open source all the way down. The browser is open source, the language is open source, this is open source. It's just the ability to make this stuff run better. And even in the 3 short years we've been working on it, it's gotten better. So again, thanks for listening to what I'm saying here. Thanks for a bit. I'm speaking about the Internet Archive in general tomorrow. I'm happy to answer questions right now, depending on how much time I have left and how much I've destroyed you. And actually, I'll answer questions about anything else. But again, thank you for your time. And my name is Jason Scott, and I do believe in games. Okay, thank you. If there are questions, I am more than happy, as long as it is not a soliloquy about yourself.
How you doing?
Doing great.
My name is Shamari. I'm a JavaScript developer, so I take a little bit of offense to your JavaScript bashing. But
You're a JavaScript developer?
I am. Yeah.
Well, JavaScript is a terrible language.
It's doubling down. I feel bad.
Well, no,
Okay.
it's an absolutely terrible language. Its purpose, though, is, just like assembly is a completely ridiculous way for a human being to manipulate a computer, the tools that people you don't work in JavaScript. You work in middleware and tools that manipulate JavaScript. So that's the thing. That's fine. That's fine. It takes your simple command, goes down into this cave that looks like the ogre cave from Lord of the Rings, and then makes magic happen, and then comes back with a 9. And that's what standards control did to us, was that things that were written well, like Go or Java, that were designed from the ground up to be human and programmatically useful, were then sucked away by companies that produce proprietary pieces. That's the thing. Chrome does Go, and it's great, and Chrome does Knuckle, Salt, which is great. But then the other guys are like, I don't know. That's their stuff. And unfortunately, I don't see that changing. And I know I'm jumping down your throat. The thing is no component of this is meant to be the be-all. I'm like, what's the easiest way to make an old computer run on a machine? We use emulators. Okay, I'll use an emulator. What program do people have that makes displaying easy on every computer? Browsers. What language does every browser have that works? JavaScript. If any one of those components, something better comes along, like tomorrow, Knuckle goes open source, everyone does Knuckle, Knuckle is native speed, I'm going to it.
Yeah,
I've got
people
no...
Right.
Anyway, you had a question
I did
not answer in a
yes.
torrent.
No, I was going to say, first of all, thank you. When I heard about the Internet Archive with the DOS games, I immediately went and played Prince of Persia at my job for about 3 hours, and it was awesome. But no, I was just curious, is this sort of transcompiled source code for these games in JavaScript, is that available, the source for that anywhere? I would just be curious to see what the source code...
So the games themselves are not at all transcompiled.
Okay.
The emulator pulls in the zip file.
Okay.
And then produces it. It can do it with an ISO. It can even use the WAV file to emulate a cassette. But it utilizes that input, that core input, to do it. In fact, in theory, no one's done this. No one's done this with mine, but there's actually a functionality where you really could hook up a real disk drive to this through a serial connection and have it read that disk drive.
So the emulator itself is in JavaScript, but it will run sort of binary stuff.
Right. The emulator 100% utilizes a variety of payloads, either .dsk files for the Apple, or .atr, or .wav, or even zip files. Yeah, that's the thing. So if you look at the transcompiled emulator code, it's not pretty. Because it's been minified, it's been wrecked down. The emulator that we currently use for the things is about 8 megabytes of JavaScript that goes down to a GZ of about 900.
Ooh, that's rough, man. That's rough. 8
It's
megabytes.
rough. When we first started running it, it used to crash Firefox. So we are the reason that Firefox can support a certain size JavaScript payload after like 3 years ago, because
that was going to be kind of my question too, is performance. Because I do some stuff, and
performance is better than you would expect.
Yeah.
That's if I had to define it, it was that went better than expected. But when it works, you have to have a relatively beefy machine, and there's some optimizations that can go, but it is surprisingly good. Like, it is actually very good. If the original emulation is very fast and efficient, we'll be fast and efficient. If it's just barely efficient, then you notice. For instance, we don't do Commodore 64s very well right now. We do, but it's slow. We do Genesis games pretty good, but we do Atari Jaguars at 78% speed right now. Obviously, we want these to be at 100%. And boy, if you want to see a system not happy, boot a Dreamcast in JavaScript, because it does not like it. Anyway, so it is ongoing. When we first got it running, in the fall of 2012, it ran a ColecoVision running Smurf Rescue at 8% speed. And now it runs, MS-DOS running at pretty much full speed for most people in most machines. It runs in phones. It runs well.
Well, thank you for your work, man. I appreciate it.
Sorry for the torrent of response. Does anybody else want to ask a simple, innocent question only to be shouted down as if they were some sort of war criminal?
Okay, I'm scared. Can you talk a little bit about the copyright status and sort of any work that the Internet Archive has done to sort of have freedom in the space of copyright, and also about the recent EFF request for preservation of games that are sort of orphaned and the DMCA?
Are you with something?
I'm an archivist.
Okay. Just checking, just making sure. The press has different weird ways of asking questions, so I always like to make sure of that. So the fundamental question is, why are you not in Guantanamo Bay? And the thing is the Internet Archive is fundamentally built into itself a question. And the question is, what is the role of a library in the 21st century? In a world where we can make anything that's informational be anywhere else. In fact, we're going to just be on the cusp of being able to transfer physical objects from here to there, via making devices and everything else. What role does a library play? And so currently, if you make anything in the world, in theory, nobody can ever make a copy of it until 70 years after they are dead. And if you were designed by a company, it's 90 years. So essentially, we have perpetual infinite copyright. No works will transfer from copyrighted status to the public domain before 2020. None did last year, none will this year, none will the year after that. We have two choices. We can dig a hole, stick ourselves into it, and die. Or we can say, well, what's a fair use of a piece of software information when you have no revenue being generated from it? No company associated with it, no future for it. So the reason that there's 676 arcade games is because there used to be 1,100. So I can now definitely tell you 405 games that are definitely owned by somebody who likes them a lot. And the Internet Archive's policy is to put things up, see who yells at us, say that we're sorry, and take it down. Since we don't have ads, since we're not monetizing it, since you don't get a pop-up ad with a shaking woman in a bikini explaining that, yes, this is your big chance for love, they don't tend to get really angry at us because we're really not some sort of exploitative money makers who are just using somebody else's work as a little gambit to make people come into our little money lodge. We lose money every time you click. I mean, if you're angry that we have something, just keep downloading it. That'll show us. And the fact is like, that's kind of been our functional way all the way down. Like we have all sorts of things where we're like, well, what happens? Like, for instance, we've been putting up VHS tapes where we couldn't find any record that it was ever transferred to DVD. So if you want to see a Sweatin' to the Oldies seniors exercise tape, we have it. Bicycle Safety Camp from 1995 on VHS, we have it. Because we don't think the bicycle safety camp people are coming back. But they might, and they write to us, and then within 15 minutes it's gone. We don't think the policy is to go for automatic filtering. We don't think, my question was, okay, if I put up every piece of Apple software, Apple II software, let's see who gets angry. The answer so far has been nobody. Nobody cares. Atari, I've had chats with the company that calls itself Atari. So there's been a variety of cartridges they've taken down and a variety of arcade machines they've taken down, but I also now know exactly which ones they own. So, in the meantime, on the other side, there's what you're talking about as the 1201 exemption. There's this thing. Here's something that, okay, all right. Laws and sausages. Now, let me tell you about a great sausage factory that's about to open up in June. Okay, so the Librarian of Congress, once every 3 years, by the light of the Rivendell moon for some reason, has a series of court cases. And what they are is people apply for exemptions to the copyright code. And you're like, well, Okay, like what? I'll give you one that most people wouldn't argue with. Say you have a piece of medical equipment, and the company that made the medical equipment is now out of business, and this medical equipment is inside of your mom's liver. So it would be really nice if another company came along and made some compatible equipment to help keep the thing running. And under copyright law, they can't do that. They can't sell it, and they can't think about it. So they go to the Librarian of Congress and says, can we get an exemption for if non-owned or defunct medical equipment software is not, no company that's currently functioning has it and the product is no longer sold, may we then reverse engineer it for the purposes of saving it? And then they rule yes. And then for 3 years, you can do it. There's about 25 or something, and I'm one of the testifiers on the ability to reverse engineer multiplayer game servers. You're like, what? If you have a company like City of Heroes, or in theory Second Life, or another one, and the ability to reverse engineer the clients to be able to understand their functionality, because right now, like say the average lifespan of an Electronic Arts game is 18 months before it becomes non-functional because they take away the servers, we're going to testify to say, could we have an exemption to go through that? Every time there'll be a representative from the industry who will show up and say, every time you do that, a baby will die. And we will go, there have been no functional cases of a baby dying. And then they will respond with, we think you hide the babies. And then the judge will go, I also see no babies. Poof, okay, three. Or, you're right, think of the babies. Bonk, depends on the guy. That's happening right now. And I'll be one of the testifiers for one of them. But it's also like the right to reverse engineer your car, the right to open up and look at a piece of diagnostic software. Another one right now is because there's been a real push against computer security professionals. I don't know if you've seen that in the news. Like, bear in mind that while this fight is going on, echoes of it end up in the press. So you'll see it kind of go by on your CNET feed, and it's kind of this warped thing that's going on because this is actually what's going on, but it kind of becomes digested into something press understands. Like when this thing came out, it could play 2,400 MS-DOS games. It could play 17,000 ZX Spectrum games. It could play 4,000 programs that we had up. And all it said was, Oregon Trail for free in your browser. Which is like we designed a Harrier jet and they went, new pizza delivery system available. Okay, all right, well, whatever you got to do. So right now they're talking about the fact that the GM has said pretty explicitly that they want to take away the right to repair your car, that your car is a licensed piece of equipment that comes from GM. John Deere has indicated that you will need a technician to fly to work with your tractor because, and they actually make this one of their arguments, people able to reverse engineer will be able to use the tractor to pirate the music on the digital system on it. So your tractor may become a tool for piracy. Anyway, so that's been going on. That's kind of where I am on it. It's a weird thing, no problem. I'm a not meek archivist. There's about 4 of us. So I speak for the trees who are working very hard. I'm a very loud archivist. Any other questions? Any other comments? We'll open it to comments and soliloquies. Everyone's looking around like, is this it? Are we being held here? What are your demands?
You all pay attention to the robot.whatever, the robots on the websites. Are there other archivals that do not, so I can at least see stuff that's has been preserved?
Okay, a good question for tomorrow, but I'll answer it now. You're asking about what's up with the robots.txt guys. So the archive will not archive a site that has a robots.txt, and if the robots.txt gets changed, we will honor it. We don't delete the data, we just make it non-browsable. So for instance, if critically important healthinformation.com gets purchased by GoDaddy, and GoDaddy turns it into a landing page, and the landing page has a robots.txt, we will not let you see the old criticalhealthinformationyounneed.com. This comes from a policy that was agreed upon by a group of libraries. It makes me laugh every time I think of it. Bear in mind, again, I'm not fully speaking for the archive. I'm a 2011 employee. I'm not a 1997 employee. In 1998, while we were still trying to show people we were a legit, totally with it library, following all the rules, the Stanford Working Group came up with this set of rules for how will a web crawler behave, and we followed it. That policy is so out of date, it's fallen off the web, and we are the only source of it now. You have to go to our own web archive to see the archive of the statement of why we don't archive things. I think that's a problem. On the other hand, there are entities who believe that the minute the Internet Archive downloads another site, they are pirates and should be shut down, and that they are just simply some sort of bizarre mole group for the Pirate Bay, putting on a legitimate piece. That's on another side. My attitude is we just archive everything. And I have an outside group called the Archive Team, and they're activist archivists, and they go in and they download everything. And anytime anything's happening, they pull as much of it down as possible and store it away. The archive may or may not make it available, but I will tell you that we have never deleted a byte. We've never deleted a byte. So we do have, I'm being recorded. That's good. I have put a note saying, wait for them to die on certain things. Wait for this company or individual to die, and then put it back up again. So I believe that there's some stuff which people don't want until history has fallen in, but we don't delete. And people say, oh, look, they made the archive delete it, but we don't. So there was some case recently where we had it blocked, and then somebody wrote that group, and they were like, oops, our thing is blocked. Now here's the also. We follow what the robots.txt says to the letter. And what that means is if you block us specifically, we won't make it available. And you go, that's weird. Yes, there are politicians, companies, and individuals who have literally put in, everybody gets to archive this except for the Internet Archive. And, oh well, that's their choice, I guess. People still download the stuff and send it to me, or send it to us. But I mean, every single move on the Internet Archive has been like this, has been like hey, let's do this. And then everyone says, well, they're going to jail. And then later people go, so the Internet Archive does it, that's interesting, and they move on. Because pioneering is always arrows in the back. I've had some arrows. They're delicious. I can live with it. Any other questions? Any other pits of amusement or greatness? Any other? All right. I think we've destroyed everybody. Do I have any music? Do I have any music? Anyway, I don't know. I don't think there's any other. I mean, I'm happy to, like I said, I'm happy to play some absolutely terrible music to send us out, but it sounds like we have it pretty much. I'll be around all today. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have in or out. If you're somebody who has physical media, who has digital media, who has any sort of material where you're like, oh God, nobody wants this, I have it, or I have something, maybe you want it, the answer is yes, we'll take it. If you have stuff, I don't care how big it is, I personally, Jason Scott, pulls in roughly 200 to 300 gigabytes of data into the archive every day through my scripts. So we can hold it. And so if you have stuff that you like to host or host with us or whatever else, we'll just take it. So if there's any history, if there's any bits, we'll do it all the time. So please don't hesitate at all to do it. And I guess that's it, man. I think it's it. I think I've murdered this fine set of people. I'm looking like I'm. Anyway, thank you so much.